Good morning. You're watching All You Need to Know on Bloomberg Print Live, and I'm Alex Matthew. First, the headlines this morning. It's a muted start for Asian equities on the last trading day of the week. Exchanges in China, Hong Kong and Taiwan are shut today. The consortium of lenders of debt-laden Jet Airways will invite expressions of interest to sell their stake on the 6th of April, that's tomorrow, as a part of a time-bound resolution plan. Contrary to expectations of a slowdown, India's consumer confidence returned to optimistic territory for the first time in 2 years, as per a survey conducted by the Reserve Bank of India. And Titan has guided for strong revenue growth for the third straight financial year. It expects for FY19 sales to grow at 21% compared to last year, while expecting margins in double digits. And finally, India's largest manufacturer of electric wires and cables, Polycab, looks to raise 1,345 crore rupees through its IPO, which opens for subscription today. Let's talk about the U.S. markets now. Well, it was a bit of a mixed session in the U.S. markets yesterday. Stocks ended with a positive bias, though. The S&P 500 gained for the sixth day in a row, while the Nasdaq ended marginally in the red. Renita Young of Bloomberg News tells you what happened and what led to that close on Wall Street.
U.S. equities are mixed with a global stock rally taking a pause. The U.S. China trade talks as well as jobs data keeping investors on the edge of their seats. Tesla's report of a record decline in first quarter deliveries dragging the Nasdaq down from 6-month highs, and Boeing and Dow propelling the Dow Jones Industrial Average into positive territory for the second straight day, while Ethiopia's preliminary report from March on the Boeing 737 MAX crash came out. Newly independent Dow saw shares rise as well. Superstar Beyonce teaming up with Adidas to become a creative partner, designing new products and relaunching her Ivy Park brand, coming amid Adidas wrestling with a slowdown in demand for retro footwear, which was one of its major money makers. Snap launching a new video service 1 week after Apple announced its own new video service that's coming soon. Guggenheim downgrading Roku, naming Apple as one of its main risks. Meanwhile, Brent crude rose to $70 a barrel for the first time since November, all amid signs of tightening supplies, and the Bloomberg Dollar Index gained as the yield on 10-year treasuries declining. And that's a look at your Thursday Wall Street action. In New York, I'm Renita Young for Bloomberg News.
Now, trade is a little thin in Asia this morning, with a lot of markets, in fact, shut. But for those that are working, let's go across to Rosalind Chin, who's joining us from Hong Kong with the limited updates today, I would think, Rosalind. But what do you have for us this morning?
I think a lot of investors here are looking at what's happening out of the trade discussions between the US and China. A lot more optimism coming out of that, with both presidents of China and the US saying that it looks like substantive progress has been made on those talks. President Xi saying that new substantive progress made on the text of the economic and trade agreement in the last month or so, and pushing for a rapid conclusion to those talks, whereas Donald Trump has been talking up the prospects for what he calls a monumental agreement. So things here looking fairly optimistic. The MSCI Asia Pacific Index, though, is pretty much flat, as you say, with some of the markets are shut, namely Hong Kong, China and Taiwan. So that's taken a lot out of the mix right now. Let's start with Japan, then, which is open. That's up by about 0.23%. The Topix up by more than a 0.25% higher at this moment in time. It's on the yen, of course, is at 111.67 to the US dollar, on course for a second week of declines, though, against the dollar, as risk sentiment improves, more investors buying into stocks. Now, Japanese wages did fall unexpectedly. We saw that data coming out earlier today, and that's in the month of February. That, of course, adds to the challenges for the BOJ, because, of course, it does take away some of the spending that might be going on in the economy, fueling concerns also that the inflation may fall short and, in fact, may even evaporate later this year. So BOJ's 2% target looking ever further away right now. The Kospi, that is pulling high, up by more than 1/5 of 1%. And we saw Samsung Electronics there, one of the biggest heavyweights on the Kospi, with its results for the last quarter, saying the operating profit dropped more than dropped the most in more than 4 years on falling memory chip prices and also slowing smartphone sales. Now, that isn't doing a lot in terms of market reaction. It's down about 1/5 of 1%. It could have been more, but Samsung did already issue a warning about this last month. So the reaction to that, while there is a reaction, has been fairly limited as such. Now, Australia, finally, that market actually in the red right now, losing by 0.9%. Aussie dollar declining. Also, we also have a focus today, as well as the trade talks, the U.S. non-farm payroll numbers. They'll be coming out later today. Any number below 150,000 jobs gain would be considered as a negative, whereas anything over 200,000 would be seen as a positive. So investors also keenly looking forward to those. Back to you.
Thanks so much for that, Rosalind. Well, I do want to talk a little bit more about what Rosalind mentioned at the beginning of her conversation with you, which was the talks between the U.S. and China on trade and the messages that have been sent by the heads of both those countries. In fact, a lot of comments being made with regard to the progress that has been made in the recent past, especially this week with the Vice Premier Liu He in Washington for talks. But for all the latest in that trade negotiation, here's Derek Wallbank of Bloomberg News.
I think people across Asia woke up this morning worried that there had been some massive backtrack in the U.S. China trade talks. I don't think that's the case at all, and I think that the subsequent comments that came out from China really illustrate that point. There has been movement toward a trade deal. Xi Jinping was had a message to convey that basically said, look, leadership is needed right now more than ever. We can get this done. There's been progress made, Liu He said, over the last months, and President Trump is at this point, I think, especially coming off North Korea, he is looking to not get into a room for a signing ceremony before there's something to sign, right? So you're not going to see a summit announced between Trump and Xi before there's something ready to go. I would be really surprised if the cart comes before the horse here, just because the president was burned the last time, and so I don't think he wants to go down that road again. But clearly there's been progress that's been made. I think there's a couple of sticking points that are left. It's not done, but we're hearing from the Chinese side that progress was made on parts of the text, and certainly that's a very good sign if you're looking for a deal upcoming. So to recap, there's not quite the here's the signing thing announcement that maybe some expected, but I don't think that this is a problem in any stretch of the word.
All right. The fine print, of course, of the drafts that have been agreed on to a certain extent between the two countries are available on BloombergQuint.com in the form of stories in which they talk about an agreement that could run to 2025. So if you're interested, do check it out on the website. Well, Agam Vakil is here to tell you all about the day's trade and what's happening in the futures and options space. Agam, well, we've had a bit of a turbulent couple of days, wouldn't you say? Yesterday was very volatile. How are we looking at the end of the week?
Well, it's anyone's guess, honestly, Alex, because the FI flows have certainly stopped trickling in, and that perhaps could be a concern today as well. And, you know, we really didn't see a very encouraging day for the indices yesterday, and today the SGX Nifty futures are indicating a tepid start. So, well, we're going to have to wait and watch as to how we see trade pan out through the course of the day. That said, as I was suggesting, another 0.5% cut for the Nifty. This is after it made over the previous couple of days, live highs, and it's come off quite substantially, and now it's below 11,600. Mid-cap and small-cap indices also falling in tandem with the benchmark. The Nifty Bank and the Nifty PSU Banking Index also coming off to a certain extent. But coming down to your ADRs, Tata Motors is perhaps one of the few stocks that stands out, continuing to move from strength to strength. But save for that, we're looking at some declines there for ICICI Bank or Dr. Reddy's. And the other set of ADRs, which should also come up, well, yeah, a little bit of weakness. Infosys, HDFC Bank, and Wipro. Watch out for TCS. That was the biggest loser yesterday on the Nifty 50. And we'll see how that turns out. Well, FIs, as I was suggesting, have actually pulled out around 226 crores on a net basis. But this time, it's the DIIs that put in 1,000 odd crores, and 1,200 to be precise. But moving on to your contributors, as I was suggesting, a bulk of your losses came from the names such as TCS, Reliance, ICICI Bank, and Infosys. In fact, Reliance and TCS providing a very big chunk of the losses in terms of contribution, and we really didn't have any help from gainers, say for something like an HDFC Limited, which gave an advance of around 12 points. But moving on to your futures and options space, and this is where things could get a little interesting, because we've seen unwinding coming for this second straight day for the Nifty futures. That's as far as open interest is concerned. And in terms of the banking Nifty futures, again unwinding again for the second straight day, down 2% in terms of open interest. And these are longs which are being unwound. So we're going to have to be careful when it comes to, at least for those who are positive in the markets. But again, this is as far as your open interest distribution is concerned. We're seeing a little more writing towards the upper level calls in comparison to, your puts. Well, the next slide should give you a better picture, and as I was suggesting, this is what we're seeing, writing at around the 11,800, 900 calls. But while we do have a little bit of an increase in the 11,600 put, we really don't know where the Nifty is going to go from here. Perhaps what can be taken as a positive is that the VIX has come off, but not substantially. As long as the VIX is considerably above the mark of 17, there is a problem, and in this case it's around 18.5. So moving on to your Nifty put call ratio, unexpected lines fell to around 1.21 from 1.42, and Adani Power, IDBI Bank remain in the F&O ban, as is the case for Jet Airways and Reliance Power. No new entrants and no exits from the F&O ban. Ambuja Cement, BPCL, and Repco Home Finance are three stocks I'm keeping an eye on the back of fresh shorts coming through. And we've seen the likes of BEML, Indian Bank, and as well as SAIL. Looking at mixed cues but unwinding. But again, it's turning. It's the expectations early on are Alex said could be a tepid start.
All right. Thanks so much for that, Agam. Yeah. Well, let's have a look at what's making headlines across the globe. Sue Keenan of Bloomberg News brings you the first word headlines.
We start with President Trump, who has resumed his attack on the Fed, saying that despite its, quote, destructive actions, the U.S. economy is doing fine. Trump added that trade agreements with China, Canada, and Mexico are moving along and that American optimism is high. And the president intends to push ahead with plans to nominate former pizza executive Herman Cain to the Fed board. Trump supporter Stephen Moore is the president's other pick. The United States is threatening to restrict the flow of information to NATO allies if they ignore warnings about Chinese technology. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made the administration's most explicit warning yet, ratcheting up Washington's campaign against Huawei. Some NATO members, including the UK and Germany, have rebuffed U.S. warnings, saying the threat from China is not as dangerous as claimed. Former Nissan boss Carlos Ghosn has told a French TV channel that he was concerned about the company's declining performance and the state of the alliance with Renault before his arrest last year. Speaking to LCI before he was detained again, Ghosn also said there is a conspiracy against him at Nissan that dates back to at least May. He said the internal plot is deeply harmful to both Nissan and Renault.
There has been a systematic demolition, and we know very well who is at the origin. There are some people inside Nissan who are at the origin of this. They benefit from complicity, as well from others outside of Nissan. They haven't found it enough to influence and act in Japan. They have acted outside Japan, notably in France.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sue Keenan. This is Bloomberg.
All right, and this is Bloomberg Quint, and we're talking about action in the primary market today. Polycab India is launching its initial public offering, and that opens for subscription today. Somit Sarkar is standing by to tell you everything that you need to know about the company and its IPO. Somit, first of all, what does the company do and what's the offer all about? What's the amount that we're talking about?
So the company is looking to raise close to 1,345 crore rupees at a price band of 533 to 538 rupees. Now the company will be offering close to 2.5 crore shares at this price band, that is 533, 538, and this is the offer size, that is 1,345. And if you see at the upper end of the price band, that is 538, the company will be valued at close to 8,000 crore rupees. Now if you see, the offer is a combination of an offer for sale and a fresh issue. Now in offer for sale, the promoters and the World Bank's lending arm IFC will be selling its stake for around 945 crore rupees, while in fresh issue the company is looking to raise close to 400 crore rupees, of which 80 crore will be used for debt repayment, 240 crore will be used for working capital requirements, and the remaining for general corporate purpose. Now the company is into manufacturing and selling wires and cables and also fast moving electrical goods, which includes the like of electric fans, LED lighting, switches, switch gears, and solar products. Now if you see, the company's mainstay business is the wires and cable business, while the FMEG business, that is the fast moving electrical goods business, was started in 2014 and still contribute less than 10% to the top line of the company. As you can see here, 8.1% it contributed in the first 9 months of financial year 2019. On the EBIT side, if you see, that's the operating side, it gets 98% of its revenue income coming in from the cable and the wire division. The electrical goods contributed only 0.9% to the EBIT as of the first 9 months of financial year 2019. Now if you see, the company has a market share of nearly 12% when it comes to the cables and wire business, and is the largest player in that segment with a market share of close to 12% in the total industry. Now this industry is expected to grow at a 14.4% CAGR over FY18 to 23. Now in FY13 to 18, the industry grew at a CAGR of around 11%. So that's a higher growth rate that the industry is expected to grow over FY18 to FY23, and that is on the back of increasing consumer spending and government initiatives on infrastructure that we have been seeing. Now along with this, if you see, the company has nearly 24 manufacturing facilities, of which 4 are specifically for the fast moving electrical goods product. Now along with this, it also has a joint venture with Trafigura, where it is setting up a plan to produce copper wire roads. Now this plant is expected to boost its backward integration, because copper wire roads will be required both to make cables and wires and also for fast moving electrical goods. And it has a pan India distribution of close to 2,800 authorized dealers, which have a touch point of close to 1 lakh retail outlets, and it also has 30 warehouses across India. So it's a big company with around 12% market share when it comes to the cable and wire business.
Somit, some big names also in competition, right? And they've been spoken of quite often. How does it compare with its peers?
So on the competition side, if you see on the listed side, there are a lot of players that are there in this business, but the nearest player to Polycab are Finolex Cables, KEI Industries, and if you see Havells India. Now Finolex Cables has nearly 96% of its revenue coming in from the cables and wire business. So this is the most near peer to Polycab. Along with that, there's KEI Industry, which has 75% revenue from cables and wire, while there's Havells. Now this company has only 32% of its revenue coming from the cables and wire business, but it also has the fast moving electrical goods business, and that contributes only 50%. So this is also a near peer for the company. Now if you see on the financials, the company's revenue and EBIT grew at a faster rate when compared to its peers like Finolex Cables and Havells India. For FY14 to FY18, Polycab's revenue grew at a compounded annual growth rate of 11.2%, and its EBIT, that is earnings before interest and tax, grew at a CAGR of around 28%. Now that was faster and at a higher rate compared to all its peers, that is Finolex Cables, KEI Industries, and Havells India. Now for Havells India, we have only considered the cable and the wire segment and the FMEG segment. Now they also have the AC segment, which we have not considered here for comparison. Now if you see on the balance sheet side, it had a debt of close to 728 crore as of FY18, but on listing this debt would come down to close to 540 crore rupees, because the company will be using the proceeds of fresh issue to reduce this debt. Now its leverage ratio is currently at 0.3 times. This would also come down to 0.2 times. So it has a healthy balance sheet when compared to its peers like KEI Industries and Havells India. Now Finolex Cable is not there in this list because it's a debt-free company here. On the return ratio side, if you see, the return ratios are not that good when compared to its peers, but compared to last year, that is FY17, if you see, all the three return ratios of Polycab have expanded. That is, return on equity stood at around 17%, return on capital employed at 25.1%, and return on asset was close to 8.2%. Lastly, on the valuation side, if you see, the valuations appear on a lower side compared to its peers as of FY19 on an annualized basis. Now, if you see, the company's price to earnings when compared to its peers is on a lower side, and compared to all its peers, in fact, its EV to EBITDA is also on the lower side. As you can see here, the price to earnings is 16.7 times for FY19 on an annualized basis for Polycab, which is at a cheaper rate when compared to its peers like Finolex Cables, KEI Industries, and Havells India. Also, the EV to EBITDA is at a cheaper rate of around 9.4 times on an annualized basis for FY19. Also, brokerages have recommended a subscribe rating for this IPO on the back of its strong financials and cheap valuations.
Thanks so much for that, Somit. Well, let's talk about the stocks that you need to watch today on account of them being in the news. Darshan Mehta is joining in. Darshan, morning. What are you picking up with regard to the stocks?
Yeah, so first of all, watch out for GM Breweries. They came out with their fourth quarter number, the first company, at least in our exchanges, to report the numbers. So what revenues are up 5%, profit was down 1.2% on a year-on-year basis. The EBITDA really disappointed. EBITDA was down 16%, which means EBITDA margins are close to 24% versus 30% last time around. The raw material as a percentage of sales move in much higher, 69% versus 61%, and that is why that impacted the margin significantly. Cipla receives the EIR for its Goa manufacturing facility by the US FDA, will be considered positive. Rallis, now after Rushil Decor and SRF, Rallis plant has again been cleared by the Gujarat State Pollution Board. Remember, it was on 19th of March that the plant was asked to be shut down. Weak tractor sales continue. VST tillers and tractors, power tiller sales was down 32%. Tractor sales was down 45% year-on-year basis, so that was weak. Mercator will be in focus. CARE revises the rating for the long-term and short-term banking facilities to default. Hinduja Global Solutions, Fidelity acquired 4 lakh shares. That is close to 2% stake in the company. And finally, some of these stocks will react. The price band has been changed from 5% to 20%. Z Media, Thirumalai, as well as Reliance Home Finance, all of them will react positively in trade today.
Thanks, Darshan, for that. Well, it's been roughly 3 years since the UK voted to exit the European Union, but for European leaders, apparently it feels like Brexit talks have been going on forever, and it's making them sick of Brexit. Like, really sick. Take a look.
I have something like a Brexit fatigue, you know.
I can understand your tiredness.
No, but because this is a disaster.
There are definitely some countries, particularly those that aren't near to the UK, who are kind of sick of this.
Monsieur Farage, personne à Bruxelles n'est en train de vouloir voler le Brexit et de vouloir détourner le vote du peuple britannique. C'est vous qui faites ce choix et c'est vous qui devez prendre vos responsabilités et faire face aux conséquences de ces décisions. Personne d'autre.
Dazu ist viel zu viel im Fluss. Ich gebe zu, dass ich die Geschäftsordnung des britischen Parlaments aus dem 17. Jahrhundert nicht aktiv präsent hatte und insofern das gestern mit Interesse zur Kenntnis genommen habe.
L'Union européenne ne peut être durablement l'otage de la résolution d'une crise politique au Royaume-Uni.
Eine Sphinx ist ein offenes Buch im Direktvergleich zum britischen Parlament. Eine Sphinx.
Aus derzeitiger Sicht überhaupt keinen Grund für eine Fristerstreckung, denn das Chaos in Großbritannien hat sich nicht verändert.
I've been wondering what that special place in hell looks like for those who promoted Brexit without even a sketch of a plan how to carry it safely.
All right. Jokes aside, it's actually, there's a lot happening that you should read about, and that's all available on the website, bloombergquint.com. There's several other stories on the website as well. Here are just a couple of them. It's early days, but billionaires Mukesh Ambani and Sunil Bharti Mittal are considering competing bids for a stake in Z Entertainment. That's according to a Bloomberg story that cites people with knowledge of the matter. Mittal's Bharti Airtel has started due diligence of Z Entertainment Enterprises and is expected to make a formal proposal soon, according to one of those people. Meanwhile, Ambani's Reliance Jio Infocom is also considering a bid, but deliberations are preliminary and may not lead to a transaction. A representative of Z said that the company doesn't comment on speculation, though it is in steady dialogue with potential partners. And meanwhile, a spokesperson for Bharti said that the company is not in the race to acquire the television network. In another update for you, Jet Airways lenders said that they would invite bids for selling a stake in the airline as early as tomorrow as part of a time-bound resolution plan. Bids will be accepted till the 9th of April. All right, that's all you need to know going into trade today, but there's a lot more that you need to know before you start planning your weekend, and you'll find all of that on Bloomberg Quint. Do stay tuned.